that up! Pick it up right now, you filthy old man!
Sir, I was just emptying the...
Shut your mouth!
Craig Holloway grabbed a half-eaten plate off the nearest table and hurled it at the janitor's chest. Grilled salmon and sauce splattered across the gray uniform. The plate shattered on the marble floor.
There, more trash for you. That's all you're good for.
The old man looked down at the food dripping from his shirt. He knelt, picked up the broken pieces, and placed them in his cart.
Disgusting,
Craig muttered. 3 staff members laughed. Not one person in that lobby said a word. What Craig didn't know was that the man standing in front of him, the man he just called garbage, owned this entire building. And by the end of tonight, Craig would lose everything. Let me take you back a few hours, before the salmon, before the shattered plate, before any of it. 5:30 on a Friday evening in October, downtown Chicago. The sun was dropping behind the skyline, painting Pinnacle Tower in gold and copper light. Benjamin Anderson walked through the service entrance on the loading dock the same way he'd done every shift for the past 2 years. Badge clipped to his chest, work boots laced tight, a rolling trash cart rattling beside him on the concrete floor. He was 68 years old. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver beard trimmed neat. His gray janitor's uniform was pressed and clean, not a wrinkle on it. His hands were rough, the knuckles cracked from years of work. But the way he carried himself, back straight, chin level, you'd think he was walking into a boardroom, not a loading dock. The freight elevator hummed as it carried him up. The smell of floor polish hung in the air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Vernon Brooks, the night shift security guard, looked up from his desk and smiled. "Evening, Mr. A." Benjamin nodded. "Evening, Vernon. How's that daughter of yours? She get into that nursing program?" Vernon beamed. "Got the letter yesterday, full ride." "That's a proud man right there," Benjamin said, tapping the desk twice with his knuckle. "You tell her I said congratulations." That was Benjamin. He knew every janitor, every guard, every maintenance worker by name. He asked about their kids, he remembered their birthdays, and every single one of them loved him for it. Now let me show you a different world. Same building, 40 floors up. The Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala was in full swing on the 40th floor. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across white tablecloths. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner. Champagne towers glittered beside ice sculptures. 300 donors in evening gowns and tuxedos mingled beneath 10-foot windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The whole event was raising money for underprivileged youth education. Remember that. It matters later. Running the show was Craig Holloway, head of events and operations, mid-40s, slicked back hair, a Rolex that caught the light every time he raised his wrist. He moved through the room like he owned it, snapping his fingers at a young black waitress to refill his glass, barking at a caterer who placed a napkin fold on the wrong side. Beside him was Tiffany Driscoll, VP of Donor Relations, blonde, sharp smile. She laughed at every one of Craig's remarks, no matter how cruel, and waved off service staff like they were insects. Upstairs was performance, charity as theater, rich people congratulating themselves for caring. Downstairs was the invisible army that kept the lights on, and nobody upstairs gave them a second thought. At 6:15, Benjamin got a call on his radio. The catering team on 40 had generated far more waste than planned. Trash was overflowing in the service corridor. They needed someone up there now. Benjamin didn't complain. He loaded fresh bags onto his cart, stepped into the freight elevator, and pressed 40. When the doors opened, he pushed his cart down the service hallway. Quiet. Steady. The wheels clicked softly on the tile. He paused at a window near the end of the corridor. The Chicago skyline stretched out in front of him, 1,000 lights against the darkening sky. He stood there for a moment, hands on the cart, looking out with an expression that wasn't tired. It was something else, something closer to memory. Then he got to work, sorting recycling from trash, folding cardboard flat, tying bags tight, wiping a coffee spill off the floor with a rag from his back pocket. Nobody asked him to do that. He just did it. On the wall of the 40th floor lobby, there was a framed photograph, black and white, dated 1989. It showed a group of men in hard hats standing at a construction site. the groundbreaking ceremony for Pinnacle Tower. Among them, near the center, was a younger man with broad shoulders and a confident smile. He looked remarkably like Benjamin. Benjamin glanced at the photo as he passed. Just a glance. Then he turned back to his cart and kept working. Most people walk past that photo every single day without a second look. But if they had stopped, if they had read the small brass plate underneath, the rest of this evening would have gone very differently. Now, here's where the night turns ugly. Benjamin was wheeling his full trash cart down the service corridor on the 40th floor. Bags tied tight, cart loaded clean. He moved quietly, staying close to the wall, keeping out of sight the way he always did during events. Head down, no noise, invisible. But the service corridor had a side door, and that door opened directly into the main gala hall. As Benjamin passed, the door swung open. A young caterer rushed through carrying an empty silver tray, and for 3 seconds, just 3, Benjamin and his trash cart were visible to the room. 300 guests, 300 pairs of eyes, and only one pair locked onto him like a missile. Craig Holloway. Craig set his champagne glass on the nearest table. He didn't place it. He set it down hard enough that the wine sloshed over the rim. He straightened his jacket, tugged his cuffs, and walked toward Benjamin with long, deliberate strides, the way a man walks when he wants everyone in the room to watch. "What the hell are you doing up here?" Benjamin stopped the cart. He kept his voice low, steady. "The catering team called for waste pickup. I was told to come now, sir." "I don't care who told you what. Service staff does not come through during a live event. You know that." Craig's voice wasn't low. It wasn't private. He wanted this heard. "I apologize. I'll be out in just a moment." "You'll be out now." Craig reached past Benjamin, grabbed a half-eaten plate of grilled salmon off the nearest table, the food still warm, the béarnaise sauce still glistening, and slammed it down onto Benjamin's trash cart. The porcelain cracked against the metal rim. Sauce splattered up Benjamin's forearm, across his sleeve, onto the front of his uniform. A piece of salmon slid down his chest and landed on his shoe. "There," Craig said. He wiped his fingers on a cloth napkin and tossed it at Benjamin's feet. More trash for the trash man. Tiffany Driscoll appeared at Craig's shoulder, wine glass in one hand, the other pressed against her collarbone in mock surprise. She laughed, loud, sharp, theatrical. The kind of laugh designed to carry, to make sure every guest within 30 feet heard it and understood. This was entertainment. 3 staff members stood along the wall. One looked at the floor. One looked at the ceiling. One looked straight at Benjamin with something that might have been pity. But nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody did a single thing. Benjamin wiped the sauce off his forearm with the back of his hand. He looked down at the stain spreading across his uniform, the uniform he had ironed that morning, the one he always kept pressed and clean. He picked the piece of salmon off his shoe and placed it in the cart. Then he gripped the handle and started pushing toward the exit. But Craig wasn't done, not even close. He followed Benjamin across the room, not quietly, not discreetly. He walked with his arms open, his chin raised, performing for the clusters of donors standing nearby with champagne flutes and curious eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. Can you believe this? A charity gala for underprivileged children, and we can't even keep the janitors from crashing the party." Laughter. It started as a murmur, a polite chuckle from one couple. Then it spread. A man in a pinstripe suit leaned toward his wife and said, loud enough for the people around him to hear. Maybe he thought the gala was for him. More laughter, louder now, the kind of laughter that bounces off marble walls and crystal chandeliers and fills a room from floor to ceiling. The kind that makes 300 people feel like they're all in on the same joke. And the joke was Benjamin. His jaw tightened. The tendons in his neck stood out like cords. His knuckles went white on the cart handle. But he didn't turn around. He didn't respond. He kept pushing. Tiffany's voice rose above the crowd, sharp, deliberate, aimed like a weapon. "Someone should check if he's even wearing a name badge. I don't think he's authorized to be in this building after 6. For all we know, he walked in off the street." Benjamin stopped. He turned slowly. Without a word, he unclipped the badge from his chest and held it up for her to see. The photo, the name, the clearance level. "I've worked here for 2 years, ma'am," he said. Quiet, even. Craig tilted his head, let out a slow, condescending smile, the kind that isn't a smile at all, the kind a man gives when he's already decided you're nothing. 2 years of what? Emptying trash cans? Mopping up other people's mess? Scrubbing toilets on your hands and knees? He looked Benjamin up and down, slowly, deliberately, head to toe, the way you'd look at something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. "That's not a resume, old man. That's a life sentence, and you're wearing the uniform to prove it." Tiffany pressed her lips together, trying to hold back a grin. She didn't try very hard. A few donors nearby exchanged glances. One woman looked uncomfortable, but she turned away. They all turned away. Benjamin clipped his badge back on. He turned the cart toward the service corridor and kept moving. One step, then another, steady and slow. That should have been the end of it. A cruel moment in a long evening, the kind of thing people forget by the time they finish their dessert. But Craig Holloway was not the kind of man who stopped when he was ahead. As Benjamin neared the corridor entrance, Craig picked up a wadded cocktail napkin from the bar and threw it. Not carelessly, deliberately. It hit Benjamin between the shoulder blades and bounced onto the marble floor. "You missed one," Craig said. His voice carried across the room like a whip crack. 2 younger staff members, both in their 20s, both standing near the bar, both watching Craig's face the way dogs watch their owner, picked up crumpled napkins and tossed them at Benjamin. One landed on the cart. The other hit him on the side of his face, just below his left eye. Benjamin stopped. He stood completely still. His chest rose and fell. His shoulders were rigid. His hands trembled at his sides, not from weakness, not from age, but from something he was holding down with every ounce of strength in his 68-year-old body. Then he bent down. He picked up every single piece, the one on the floor, the one from the cart, the one that had hit his face. He placed them all, one by one, into the trash bag, neatly, carefully, the way a man does when his dignity is the only thing he has left. Across the room, an elderly white woman in a navy blue gown had been watching the entire scene. Her name was Eleanor Tate, 73 years old, one of the Sterling Foundation's longest-standing donors. Her face had drained of color. Her fingers gripped the stem of her wine glass so tightly the crystal looked ready to snap. She stepped forward. One step, then another. Tiffany appeared at her side instantly, touching her elbow with practiced warmth. "Don't worry, Mrs. Tate. We're handling it. He shouldn't have been up here in the first place. You know how it is." Eleanor looked at Tiffany's hand on her arm. Then she looked at Tiffany's face. She said nothing, but her eyes, cold, steady, furious, said everything. Now came the final blow. Benjamin reached the service elevator at the end of the corridor. He pressed the call button. The light above the door blinked on. A soft chime echoed in the hallway. Craig stepped in front of the doors, feet planted wide, arms crossed. "Where do you think you're going?" "Downstairs, sir. I need to unload the cart." "Not in this elevator, you don't. This elevator is for donors and executives, not for you." Craig jerked his thumb toward the far end of the hallway. "Take the stairs." Benjamin looked at him. "The stairs are 12 floors down, sir. This cart weighs over 100 pounds. Craig leaned in. Close. Close enough that Benjamin could smell the champagne and cologne rolling off him in waves. "Not my problem." He spaced each word like he was hammering nails. "Should have thought about that before you decided to be a janitor for a living." Then Craig turned to a young white staff member standing near the wall. A kid, mid-20s, pale face, eyes wide. "You, make sure he takes the stairs. And if he's not off this floor in 10 minutes, write him up. I want it on his file before midnight." The young man swallowed. He nodded. He didn't look at Benjamin. Benjamin stood there for a long, silent moment, his eyes locked on Craig's. His expression was still, completely still, but something behind it shifted. Not anger, not defeat. Something deeper, something heavier. Something that a man like Craig Holloway would never understand, because he had never once in his life been forced to carry it. Then Benjamin pulled the cart away from the elevator. The wheels caught on the marble edge and let out a long, high-pitched squeak that echoed down the empty corridor like a cry. He dragged the cart toward the stairwell door. One step, then another, slow and heavy. Every person in that hallway heard those wheels. Not one of them said a word. The stairwell door slammed shut behind Benjamin, and just like that, the music was gone. The laughter was gone. The champagne, the chandeliers, the 300 guests in evening wear, all of it vanished behind a steel fire door. Now it was just him. Him and a 100-pound trash cart and 12 floors of concrete stairs. The fluorescent light above the landing buzzed and flickered. The walls were bare gray cinder block. The air was cold, damp, tinged with the smell of old paint and rusted metal. His work boots echoed on every step, a hollow, lonely sound that bounced up and down the shaft like it had nowhere to go. Benjamin gripped the cart handle with both hands and tilted it backward, easing it down the first step. The wheels caught on the edge. He pulled harder. The cart lurched forward and slammed down onto the landing with a bang that rattled his wrists up to his elbows. 1 floor down, 11 to go. By the 3rd floor, sweat had started beading on his temples. His knees ached, a deep, grinding ache that lived in the bone, the kind that 68 years of living puts there and never takes back. His breathing came heavier, shorter. Each exhale fogged faintly in the cold stairwell air. By the 6th floor, his shoulders burned. The muscles in his lower back had tightened into knots. He paused on the landing, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. Just for a moment, just long enough to feel the concrete press cold against his back through the thin fabric of his uniform. Then he grabbed the cart and kept going. On the 8th floor landing, one of the trash bags tore. The plastic split along the side, and leftover food, half-eaten canapés, soggy napkins, shrimp tails, bread crust soaked in champagne, spilled across the concrete. Benjamin stood there, looking down at the mess. Alone. Not a soul in sight. Just him and the garbage from a party he wasn't welcome at, spreading across the floor at his feet. He knelt down. His knees hit the cold concrete. He picked up every piece by hand, one shrimp tail at a time, one soaked napkin at a time, and placed them back into the torn bag. He tied the rip shut with a knot. He wiped his hands on his pants. He stood back up. In the corner of the ceiling, a small security camera watched it all. Its red light blinked once, twice, recording. That footage would matter very soon. Now let me take you back upstairs, because while Benjamin was dragging 100 pounds of garbage down 12 flights of stairs alone, Craig Holloway was having the time of his life. He was standing near the bar on the 40th floor, jacket unbuttoned, Rolex catching the light, telling the story like it was the funniest thing that had ever happened to him. "You should have seen his face," Craig said, swirling his scotch. Standing there with sauce all over his shirt, like a lost dog. Tiffany leaned against the bar beside him, stirring her drink with a cocktail straw. "I thought he was going to cry. Honestly, his lip was doing that thing." "That's how you handle these people," Craig said. He said it casually, like he was sharing a management tip. "Give them an inch, they think they own the building. You have to remind them where they stand, every single time." Tiffany clinked her glass against his. "Cheers to that." 10 minutes later, Craig pulled out his phone and called the building's overnight supervisor, a man named Glenn who had worked at Pinnacle Tower for 8 years. "Glenn, it's Holloway. I need you to write up one of the janitorial staff. Benjamin Anderson, badge number 4212. There was a pause on the other end. "Write him up for what?" "Unauthorized presence on a restricted floor during a private event. Failure to follow service protocols. Disruptive conduct." Another pause, longer this time. "Craig, he was called up there by catering. I authorized it myself. And honestly, Mr. Anderson has been here longer than most of us. He's never had a single complaint. I don't care if he's been here since the building was built. Write him up. Mark it as a final warning, and I want a termination recommendation attached." Glenn went quiet. The silence stretched. Then, very softly, "Yes, sir." Craig hung up. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say goodnight. He just slipped the phone back into his jacket and picked up his scotch. Across the room, Eleanor Tate had been watching Craig for the past 15 minutes. She hadn't taken a sip of her wine. She hadn't spoken to anyone. She had just been standing near the window, her navy blue gown catching the city light, her face perfectly composed and absolutely furious. She walked toward Craig. Her heels clicked on the marble, sharp, precise, like a clock counting down. "Mr. Holloway." Craig turned and his face shifted instantly, the easy smile, the warm eyes, the executive charm. "Mrs. Tate, wonderful to see you tonight. Are you enjoying the—" That was disgraceful. The smile froze. "Excuse me. What you did to that man, the things you said, the trash your staff threw at him, that was disgraceful, Mr. Holloway, and you know it." Craig's jaw tightened, but the smile held. "Barely. Mrs. Tate, with all due respect, you don't understand how building operations work. That man was where he wasn't supposed to be. I was simply maintaining event protocol." Eleanor stepped closer. Her voice dropped low, but every word landed like stone. "I know cruelty when I see it, Mr. Holloway. I've been attending events in this building since before you had a job title, and I know this building's history better than you think." Craig's smile flickered. He opened his mouth to respond, but a major donor approached from the side. Craig turned instantly, the mask back on, the handshake extended, the charm restored, and greeted the donor like Eleanor Tate didn't exist. Eleanor stood there for a moment, watching him. Then she turned, walked to a quiet corner near the coat check, pulled out her phone, and made a call. Her voice was low, calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Harold, it's Eleanor. Something just happened at the gala that you need to know about. It involves Ben." 12 miles away, in a brownstone in Lincoln Park, Harold Preston, Chief Operating Officer of Anderson Holdings Group, was sitting in his living room with a glass of red wine and a book on his lap. When his phone rang and he saw Eleanor's name, he answered immediately. "Eleanor, what's going on?" She told him everything. The insults, the plate thrown at Benjamin's chest, the napkins hurled at his face, the elevator blocked, the stairwell march, the write-up ordered. Harold's face went pale. He set the wine glass down on the table. His hand was shaking. "They did what to him?" "You heard me, Harold." "Eleanor, does Craig Holloway know who Benjamin Anderson is?" A pause. Then, quietly, "Clearly not." Harold closed his eyes. When he opened them, his expression had changed. The warmth was gone. What was left was something cold, focused, absolute. "I'm making some calls. Don't leave the building." He hung up. He stood. He loosened his collar. And then Harold Preston made 5 phone calls in 4 minutes. Lorraine Caldwell, Chief Legal Officer. She answered on the first ring. Dennis Moore, Chief Financial Officer, picked up on the second. Patricia Elmore, VP of Human Resources. She was already in her car before Harold finished talking. Arthur Graves, board member. He said 2 words, "I'm coming." Sandra Whitfield, board member and philanthropist. She said 3, "How dare they?" Each of them received the same message in the same voice with the same cold fury behind it. Someone just threw garbage at the chairman. Get to Pinnacle Tower. Now. Now. Back to Benjamin. He reached the basement level. The stairwell door groaned as he pushed it open. He wheeled the cart into the maintenance room, a small windowless space with shelves of cleaning supplies, the hum of a boiler on the other side of the wall, and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. He parked the cart in the corner, locked the wheels, pulled off his work gloves and dropped them on the shelf. Then he sat down on an overturned bucket. The plastic creaked under his weight. He removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands, and let out a long, slow breath. The kind of breath a man lets out when he's been holding something inside for a very long time. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a wallet, old leather, worn soft. From inside it, he slid out a small photograph with curled edges. It showed a younger man, mid-30s, strong jaw, wide smile, standing in front of a construction site. Hard hat on, blueprints rolled up under one arm. Behind him, The steel skeleton of a skyscraper rose against a blue sky. On the back, in faded handwriting, "First brick, first dream. B.A. 1988. Benjamin looked at the photo for a long time. His thumb traced the edge. Then he slid it back into his wallet, tucked the wallet into his pocket, and stood up. He straightened his uniform, brushed off the dried sauce stain, adjusted his badge. He could have revealed who he was at any moment. Up there, in front of Craig, in front of 300 guests, he could have said one sentence and ended it all. But Benjamin Anderson had spent a lifetime believing something most people never learn, that a man's character isn't proven by announcing his title. It's proven by what he endures when no one knows his name. 22 minutes after Harold Preston hung up the phone, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the front entrance of Pinnacle Tower. The doors opened. 6 people stepped out onto the sidewalk, one after another. Harold Preston, Chief Operating Officer. Lorraine Caldwell, Chief Legal Officer. Dennis Moore, Chief Financial Officer. Patricia Elmore, VP of Human Resources. Arthur Graves, Board Member. Sandra Whitfield, Board Member and Philanthropist. They walked through the main lobby in business attire, suits, heels, briefcases, moving in a tight formation, fast, silent, with the kind of urgency that makes security guards stand up straight and front desk staff stop mid-sentence. Vernon Brooks was behind the security desk. He saw them coming. He stood. "They're expecting you on 40, Vernon said. Then quieter, "But Mr. A is downstairs." Harold didn't hesitate. "We're going to him first." They took the freight elevator to the basement, the same elevator Benjamin rode every day, the same one that smelled like floor polish and industrial cleaner. The doors opened onto the maintenance hallway, bare concrete, humming boiler, a single fluorescent tube flickering overhead. They found Benjamin in the maintenance room, sitting on an overturned bucket, sauce stains still on his uniform, glasses in his hand. He looked up when they walked in. 6 executives in tailored suits, standing in a room full of mops and trash bags, looking at him with faces that were somewhere between fury and grief. Harold spoke first. His voice was thick. "Ben, we heard what happened." Benjamin put his glasses back on. "I'm fine, Harold. It's not the first time." Sandra Whitfield stepped forward. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were burning. "It's the last time." Lorraine Caldwell opened her briefcase. "Then, as your legal counsel, I'm telling you, we already have security footage from every camera on the 40th floor and the stairwell. We have Eleanor Tate's eyewitness account, and we have a digital trail of the fraudulent write-up Craig ordered through Glenn in operations." She paused. "This is textbook hostile workplace conduct with clear racial animus, and it's all on record." Benjamin looked at her, then at Harold, then at each of them, one by one. "So what do you want to do?" he asked. Harold extended his hand. "Come with us." They walked Benjamin to the end of the basement corridor, past the boiler room, past the storage cages, past the loading dock, to a door that most employees in this building had never seen. Behind it was a private elevator. Not the freight elevator, not the service lift, not the stairs. A private keycard access elevator with brushed steel doors and a mahogany interior. The executive elevator, the one that went directly to the 41st floor, the CEO suite. Harold swiped his card. The doors opened. All 7 of them stepped inside. Benjamin was still in his janitor's uniform. Gray shirt, gray pants, sauce stain on the chest, badge clipped to his pocket. He didn't change. He didn't ask to change. The elevator rose, 41 floors in 30 seconds. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the cables above them. The doors opened. Mahogany walls, oil paintings, soft lighting. A long hallway with polished hardwood floors. And at the end of it, mounted on the wall beside a set of double doors, a brass nameplate. It read, "Benjamin T. Anderson, founder and chairman, Anderson Holdings Group." Harold reached into a closet near the entrance and pulled out a fresh suit jacket. Navy blue, tailored. He held it out to Benjamin. Benjamin looked at it. Then he shook his head. "I'll go as I am." Harold nodded. He put the jacket back. The 7 of them rode the elevator down 1 floor, to 40, to the gala. The doors opened directly into the main hall. The gala was still going, music playing, glasses clinking. Craig Holloway was standing at the front of the room, microphone in hand, mid-toast, thanking donors for their extraordinary generosity. Then the doors opened, and Benjamin Anderson walked in, flanked by 6 of the most powerful executives in the company, 3 on his left, 3 on his right, all of them in suits, all of them stone-faced, and Benjamin in the center, in his gray janitor's uniform with a sauce stain on his chest. Craig saw them first. His voice trailed off mid-sentence. His champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. His mouth hung open. Harold stepped forward. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. His voice carried across the entire room like a bell. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. I'd like to introduce someone most of you should already know. This is Benjamin T. Anderson, the founder of Anderson Holdings Group, the owner of this building, and the chairman of the board that oversees every operation in this tower, including this event. Silence. Total, absolute silence. 300 people. Not one breath. Craig's face drained of color. White as the tablecloths. His hands started shaking. The champagne glass trembled in his grip. Behind him, Tiffany Driscoll's wine glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble floor and shattered. Red wine spread across the white stone like a wound. Benjamin stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. 2 years ago, I stepped down from daily operations and chose to work as a janitor in my own building. I wanted to see how this company treated the people who keep the lights on. He paused. His eyes swept the room, slow, steady, landing on every face. Tonight, I got my answer. The room was silent. 300 people frozen in place. And in the back of the room, Eleanor Tate pressed her hand to her mouth. Tears ran down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Craig Holloway's mouth moved before his brain caught up. Mr. Anderson, I had no idea. If I had known who you were, I never would have. That's exactly the problem, Craig. Benjamin's voice was quiet, level. He didn't step closer. He didn't raise a finger. He just stood there in his stained uniform, looking straight into Craig's eyes. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them like a human being. The words landed on the room like a hammer on glass. Craig scrambled. Sweat formed along his hairline. He loosened his tie with one finger and tried again. Sir, it was a misunderstanding. I was just trying to maintain event protocol. Mr. Holloway. Lorraine Caldwell stepped forward. Every syllable came out sharp, precise, and final. We have 42 minutes of security footage from tonight. It shows you throwing food onto Mr. Anderson's cart. It shows you directing staff to throw garbage at his person. It shows you blocking elevator access and ordering a fraudulent write-up with a termination recommendation. For a man who was authorized to be on this floor. She paused. We also have 6 eyewitness statements. I would advise you to stop talking. Craig's mouth closed. His face had gone from white to gray. Beside him, Tiffany took a half step backward. I wasn't involved, she said. Her voice cracked. I was just standing there. Patricia Elmore turned to face her, calm, measured, merciless. Ms. Driscoll, the footage shows you laughing, encouraging Mr. Holloway's behavior, and physically blocking Mrs. Tate from intervening. You are equally culpable. Tiffany's mouth opened, closed. No words came. Her hands trembled at her sides. Harold Preston stepped to the center of the room. Effective immediately, Craig Holloway and Tiffany Driscoll are suspended without pay, pending a full internal investigation. Security will escort them from the premises. From the back of the room, Vernon Brooks moved forward, the same guard who greeted Benjamin with warmth every evening. He walked up to Craig and Tiffany and gestured toward the door. No words, just a gesture. Craig stared at him, his jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he might say something. He didn't. He dropped his eyes and walked toward the exit. Tiffany followed 2 steps behind, heels clicking fast and uneven on the marble. 300 guests watched them leave. The doors closed behind them. Then one person began to clap. Slow, steady, Then another. Then the entire room erupted into applause that shook the chandeliers. Benjamin raised his hand. The room went quiet.
I didn't come here tonight for applause. I came here to take out the trash. A pause. The faintest smile. And it seems I've done that in more ways than one. Quiet, warm laughter. The kind that releases something tight in your chest. Benjamin walked toward the back of the room, toward Eleanor Tate. She was standing by the window, tears on her face, both hands pressed against her heart. He took her hands in his. Eleanor, thank you. You were the only person in this room who saw a man instead of a uniform. She let out a laugh that was half a sob. Ben, you stubborn fool, why didn't you just tell them who you were? Benjamin looked at her, eyes steady, warm, unbroken. Because I needed to know who they were. The gala ended that night, but the reckoning was just getting started. The following Monday morning, Anderson Holdings Group launched a full internal investigation. Lorraine Caldwell led it personally, alongside an independent HR firm brought in from outside the company. No one inside the building was allowed to interfere. No one was allowed to bury anything. Not this time. The investigators pulled every email Craig Holloway had sent in the past 3 years, every internal memo, every complaint filed against him, every response, or lack of response, from the departments that were supposed to hold him accountable. What they found was worse than anyone expected. 12 formal complaints. 12. Filed by 12 different employees over 3 years. Every single one of them a person of color. A black security guard written up for attitude after asking Craig to say please. A Latino caterer reassigned to the basement kitchen after Craig said her accent made donors uncomfortable. A black maintenance worker denied a promotion Craig personally blocked, with no documented reason. 12 complaints, all of them buried, all of them dismissed, all of them sitting in a drawer in a filing cabinet that nobody had opened in years. And then there was Tiffany Driscoll. Her emails told a story all on their own. Internal messages to event coordinators instructing them to keep diverse staff off the main floor during donor events. A note to the catering manager recommending that front-facing servers should reflect our donor base. Her words. A reply to an employee who asked why she hadn't been invited to a company holiday party. It's about optics, nothing personal. Nothing personal. That phrase showed up in 4 separate emails. Every single time, it was personal. The results were unanimous. Both Craig Holloway and Tiffany Driscoll were terminated for cause, effective immediately. Craig lost his $200,000 salary. His stock options, worth over $600,000, were forfeited. His company paid health insurance, his parking space, his corner office on the 38th floor, all of it gone. He walked out of Pinnacle Tower on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a single cardboard box, flanked by 2 security officers, while employees watched from behind glass doors. Tiffany was escorted out the same day. Her non-compete clause meant she couldn't work in donor relations, event management, or corporate communications for any firm in the state of Illinois for 18 months. Her LinkedIn profile went dark by nightfall. But the story didn't stay inside the building. It couldn't. A story like this doesn't stay quiet. 3 days after the terminations, a reporter named Natalie Sims at a Chicago news station received an anonymous tip. She made some calls, she pulled some records, and by Thursday evening, she ran a segment that changed everything. The headline, "Billionaire Founder Works as Janitor in His Own Building. Staff Threw Trash at Him." The segment aired at 6 o'clock. By midnight, it had been shared 400,000 times. By Friday morning, it was on every major network. By Sunday night, it had 35 million views and was still climbing. Benjamin had authorized the release of select security footage. The moment Craig threw the plate onto his cart, the napkin hitting his back, the stairwell march with the overloaded cart. The clip circulated everywhere. News channels, social media, late-night shows. The image of Craig throwing that napkin, captured from a ceiling-mounted camera clear as day, became something larger than a single incident. Op-eds poured in from every direction. National commentators weighed in. The phrase, "Do you know who cleans your building?" trended on social media for 6 straight days. Benjamin did one interview, just one, a sit-down with Natalie Sims in the lobby of Pinnacle Tower. He wore a gray shirt, not his uniform, but close. He sat in a folding chair, hands folded, voice steady. He didn't attack Craig by name. He didn't gloat. He didn't perform. He said, "I've been black in America for 68 years. What happened to me that night wasn't unique. What's unique is that I had the power to do something about it. Most people don't. And that's the part that should keep us all up at night." The legal consequences followed within weeks. Craig Holloway was charged with workplace harassment and filing a fraudulent disciplinary report. He pleaded no contest. The judge sentenced him to 200 hours of community service at a homeless shelter on the south side of Chicago, plus 18 months of mandatory anti-discrimination counseling. Tiffany Driscoll faced civil liability for her role in enabling a hostile work environment. She settled out of court. The amount was not disclosed, but as part of the settlement, she was required to issue a public written apology, one that was published in 3 Chicago newspapers and read aloud at a company-wide meeting at Pinnacle Tower. The overnight supervisor, Glenn, resigned voluntarily the week after the investigation concluded. He hadn't thrown trash, he hadn't laughed, but he had said yes, sir, when he should have said no. Benjamin personally wrote him a letter of recommendation. Because Glenn had hesitated, he had pushed back, even if only for a moment. And Benjamin believed that moment mattered. 6 weeks after the gala, Benjamin held a press conference in the lobby of Pinnacle Tower. He stood at a podium beside Vernon Brooks, 2 maintenance workers, and 3 members of the night shift cleaning crew, all of them in uniform. He announced a series of reforms at Anderson Holdings Group, a new anonymous reporting system for workplace discrimination, accessible to every employee from executives to janitors, with an independent review board. Mandatory dignity and workplace training for all staff, starting with senior leadership. A $5 million scholarship fund, named after his late mother, Dorothy Anderson, for underprivileged youth pursuing careers in business and trades. And one more thing. Effective immediately, all service-level employees, janitors, maintenance workers, security guards, would receive a 15% pay raise. And going forward, they would be invited to every company event as guests, not as staff, as guests. Benjamin looked out at the cameras. Then he looked at Vernon. Then at the crew standing beside him. "These are the people who built this company," he said. "Not the ones in the boardroom. The ones who showed up before the lights came on and stayed after everyone else went home." 6 months later, Pinnacle Tower was a different place. Not because the walls had changed. Not because the chandeliers were brighter or the lobby was wider. It was different because of something you couldn't see, something you could only feel when you walked through the doors. Every new employee heard the same thing during orientation. The HR trainer would pause, look around the room, and say, "Treat every person in this building with respect. You never know who's watching. And more importantly, it shouldn't matter." Vernon Brooks was promoted to Director of Facility Operations. Corner office on the 32nd floor, new title on the door, a salary that matched. But every evening, when Benjamin came through the service entrance, Vernon still looked up from whatever he was doing, smiled, and said the same thing he'd always said. "Evening, Mr. A. Some things don't change. The good ones shouldn't." Eleanor Tate joined the board of the Sterling Foundation. Her first act was a full review of every event's staffing policy. No service employee would ever again be treated as invisible in a room they helped build. She made sure of it. Personally, line by line, policy by policy. And Craig Holloway? He completed his 200 hours of community service at a shelter on the south side of Chicago. He showed up on time. He did what he was told. He mopped floors. He sorted donations. He served meals to people who looked nothing like the donors he used to charm. In an interview months later, a short piece in a local paper, buried on page 9, Craig said one thing worth remembering. "I spent my whole career looking up. I never once looked around." But let me be clear about something. That sentence doesn't redeem him. One moment of clarity doesn't erase 12 complaints. It doesn't undo the careers he stalled, the people he humiliated, the voices he silenced for 3 years. Craig Holloway wasn't a villain who became a hero. He was a man who finally ran out of room to hide. Now, the final image. Early morning, a Tuesday in April. The sun hadn't come up yet. The lobby of Pinnacle Tower was empty. No guests, no donors, no cameras. Just the hum of the heating system and the faint smell of lemon floor cleaner. Benjamin Anderson stood in the middle of the lobby with a mop in his hands. Gray shirt, gray pants, badge clipped to his chest. He moved the mop in slow, even strokes across the marble floor, the wet surface catching the glow of the emergency exit signs above. Behind him, on the wall, hung two framed photographs. The first was from 1989, black and white. A young man in a hard hat standing at a construction site, blueprints under his arm. The groundbreaking ceremony for Pinnacle Tower. The second was new, color. Taken the night of the gala, Benjamin in his janitor's uniform, standing in the center of the 40th floor, flanked by 6 executives: Harold, Lorraine, Dennis, Patricia, Arthur, Sandra. All of them looking at him the way you look at someone who earned your respect a long time ago. Beneath the 2 photos, a small brass plate had been mounted to the wall. It read, "Character is what you do when no one knows your name." Benjamin paused. He leaned on the mop handle and looked at both photographs. The young man with the hard hat, the old man with the stained uniform. The same eyes, the same steady hands, the same quiet belief that dignity is not something you wear, it's something you carry. He smiled, a small, private smile, the kind no one else needs to see. Then he turned back to the floor and kept mopping. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been treated like you were invisible? Or have you ever been the one who finally spoke up when everyone else stayed quiet? I want to hear your story. If this one moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because at the end of the day, a man's uniform doesn't tell you who he is. His character does. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the building is the one holding the mop. Dead serious right now. A uniform doesn't tell you who someone is. Their character does. So treat the janitor the same way you'd treat the CEO, because one day they might be the same person. Respect everyone. No exceptions, ever.